Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, agents, or applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that member to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I'm also pleased to advise that this is being broadcast on the township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note the township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of the meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and or consent. The purpose of public meetings are to inform and provide the public with an opportunity to ask questions and to express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will introduce the application and report on all correspondence received. Next, the applicant or their agent will present any relevant information. Township staff then will provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant or their agent. Following that, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And finally, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things. 1, approve the application. 2, deny the application. Or 3, defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decisions on an application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent application is 20 days within giving of the notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please first give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak at this meeting will appear in the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of the decision, please leave your name and address with township staff. So I'm going to call on and ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion for adoption of the minutes. I have a motion identified as COA 2025-30, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hawkins, that the minutes of the June 17th, 2025 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. Going to move on to Agenda E, which is new applications. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for E1, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-14-25.
Thank you, Chair. The first application this evening is minor variance A14-25 for the lands known municipally as 1511 Cunningham Crescent. The subject lands are zoned shoreline residential 2 together with environmental protection and are located within the shoreline residential land use designation of the Township of Severn official plan. The applicant is proposing the construction of a new single detached dwelling and is seeking relief from the township zoning bylaw with respect to the interior yard setback and lot coverage requirements to accommodate the development. As highlighted in the table below, you can see the two variances that are requested. The first being that reduced interior yard setback of 1.69 meters, whereas 3 meters is required by the bylaw, and also an increased maximum lot coverage of 19.55%, whereas the zoning bylaw would permit only a maximum coverage of 15%. In terms of correspondence received for this application, there were no comments or objections received from the Public Works Department or the Clerk's Office. There was a letter of support received from members of the public in support of the application for this minor variance. And finally, the Building Department advised that the applicant will need to ensure the spatial separation requirements of the Ontario Building Code are complied with regarding the maximum unprotected openings and exterior cladding construction. Pending planning approvals, building permits would be required for the proposed works, including the associated septic system. And the building department also reminded the applicants to ensure that all clearances to property lines as required by the Ontario Building Code for the septic system are adhered to. I will leave it at that. The applicant for this minor variance is in attendance this evening virtually on Zoom and may wish to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on the applicant and or their agent to please present the application together with any relevant information if they have any. You're free to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you would like.
Hi, Council. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
That's perfect. Yeah, I have no additional comments. Just a comment regarding that I believe we're in line with the official plan, and I believe we're creating kind of a net positive with the footprint in relation to the old footprint.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do township staff have any further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant and or the applicant, and any recommended conditions as applicable?
Thank you, Chair. I will just give some context to the application. So the lands are located along the western shore of Lake Couchiching, just north of the city of Aurelia boundary down here on Cunningham Crescent, shown here in red. The 2024 aerial imagery, you can see the existing shoreline development all in the area, along with the existing dwelling located on the property, which is proposed to be demolished to make room for the proposed new construction. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. It does give the committee a good general idea of sort of where the existing building envelope falls, here shown in red, together with the proposed new dwelling overlaid. So you can see the slight encroachment here into the side yard, as well as getting a overview of the proposed development on site in terms of its lot coverage. There's a proposed septic system located here in the rear yard, which is abutting Cunningham Crescent further over here, which is partially the reason why the dwelling is not set back further, but it is set back in compliance with the zoning bylaw in terms of its setback from Lake Couchiching. This is the concept elevation submitted with the application, so you can see that it is a two-story dwelling with the garage being to the rear out towards Cunningham. Couple site photos here just for some context of the application. The first one here, you can see the dwelling. This is sort of standing on the shoreline looking towards the dwelling. And then the second photo here is standing in front of the dwelling looking out towards the shoreline. And you can see some of the existing vegetation along the shoreline as well as down the sides of the property. As detailed within staff report D25021, township staff are of the opinion that the application is consistent with the PPS and does satisfy the 4 tests as required under the Planning Act, subject to the recommended conditions. There are some shoreline restoration opportunities recommended in those conditions through a development agreement, which is a very standard condition for this type of application. The committee would be fairly familiar with that. And for those reasons, planning and development staff have no objections to the provisional approval of this application, subject to the recommended conditions. Again, these are standard for this type of development, just being that taxes are paid to date. The construction shall be in substantial compliance with the plans submitted with the application, and that the property owners enter into a development agreement with the municipality pursuant to section 45 9.1 of the Planning Act in order to establish a vegetation protection zone, protecting the existing vegetation on the property and restoring the shoreline vegetation to the maximum extent possible, including the additional plantings of native and self-sustaining species, enhancing that vegetation within the front yard, the collection of securities to ensure good condition of the plantings for a minimum of 18 months until they can be established, providing for silt fencing and construction related measures to protecting the immediate shoreline during construction, requiring a lot grading plan and the footings of the dwelling to be pinned to ensure conformity with the minor variance, and that all costs associated with that agreement and its registration on title would be the responsibility of the property owner. Thank you. No one is registered, no.
Okay.
However, there are people attending.
Okay. Are there any persons participating virtually via Zoom who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? You can please address your questions through me if there is anybody. I'm seeing none. Are there any persons in attendance in person who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, I declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion before us, COA 2025-31, moved by member Hawkins, second by member Hiles, that staff report D25-021 be received, and further that in the matter of minor variance application A-14-25, the application be provisionally approved, subject to the recommended conditions outlined in attachment 5 to staff report D25-021. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for this application is now closed. You, the applicant or agent, or any interested parties are free to stay for the remainder of the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the next application. Would township staff introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for E2, which is an application for minor variance A-15-25?
Thank you, Chair. As noted, this next application is minor variance A-15-25 for the lands located at 3011 Lakeside Drive. This property is zoned Shoreline Residential 1 and is located within the fully serviced settlement area of West Shore. The applicant is requesting a minor variance to facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing residential dwelling with an area of approximately 17.4 square meters or 187 square feet. To summarize, the two variances requested are first a reduced front yard setback and watercourse setback of 19.3 meters to the proposed addition, whereas the zoning bylaw would normally require a 20-meter setback, and also a reduced interior yard setback of 0.7 meters, where the bylaw would normally require a setback of 1.5 meters. There were no comments or objections received from the Public Works Department, Fire and Emergency Services, or the Clerk's Office, and the Building Department just wishes to remind the applicant that they will need to ensure spatial separation requirements are met regarding the maximum unprotected openings in the exterior cladding, as well as pending planning approvals. A building permit would be required for the construction of the proposed addition. I will leave it at that. I do believe that the applicant's agent is in attendance this evening and also has a presentation for the committee. Thank you.
I now call on the applicant's agent to please present the application with any relevant information they have.
Hello, is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Good evening, committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Vanessa Simpson. I'm a senior planner from Morgan Planning, here to represent the applicant on the proposed minor variance application on lands known as 3011 Lakeside Drive. Next slide. The subject property is located on the western shoreline of Lake Couchiching within the West Shore settlement area. The property contains approximately 15.4 meters of frontage onto the lake with an area of 665.8 meters square. The surrounding land uses are primarily shoreline residential dwellings fronting onto Lake Couchiching. The character of the area is defined by existing shoreline residential developments and similar dwellings located on or close to the shoreline. You can skip over the next slide, Brad. Perfect. The property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings. The existing dwelling is approximately 90.9 square meters in floor area and is serviced by municipal services. Next slide. The purpose of the application is to permit an addition on the eastern side of the existing dwelling. The proposed addition would form part of and be accessed from the interior of the existing dwelling. The proposed addition measures 17.4 square meters in size. The addition is cited to be set back 19.3 meters from the shoreline and is located further from the shoreline than both the existing dwelling as well as the deck. No vegetation is required to be removed to permit the addition. The existing accessory structure, which is currently a storage area, is to be removed to allow for the addition and currently encroaches the eastern lot line where the proposed addition will be, which you'll see in the next image. The proposed minor variance seeks to permit minimum front yard setback and setback from a water course of 19.3 meters, whereas 20 meters is required, and a minimum interior side yard setback of 0.7 meters, whereas 1.5 meters is required. Next slide. So you can see in the site plan, it's kind of small. Well, it's even on that big screen, but the red box, which you can kind of make out there, is the existing portion of the structure that will be removed. That's the area that currently encroaches onto the neighboring property. And the yellow boxed area is the proposed dwelling addition. Next slide. These are a few elevations of the proposed structure. Next slide. And the floor plan. So again, the addition area is that kind of bottom portion, kind of where the dining table is. Yeah, exactly. Next slide. The subject lands, as Brad mentioned, are zoned Shoreline Residential 1, SR1 zone, and designated settlement living. A full planning justification report has been submitted with the application addressing the provincial planning statement, county official plan, Severn official plan, Severn zoning bylaw. The planning report also addresses the 4 tests of the minor variance, which you're all very familiar with. In conclusion, the application is appropriate and desirable and represents good land use planning. It's consistent with the PPS and conforms with the policies of the county official plan and township official plan. The minor variance is seeking relief from the minimum front yard setback and setback from the water course, as well as the minimum interior side yard setback. The proposed addition will improve the encroachment of the existing accessory building onto the neighboring property. And lastly, the minor variance application meets all 4 tests outlined in Section 45 of the Planning Act. I will add that we have reviewed staff report, staff recommendation, and the conditions of provisional approval, and we have no concerns at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do township staff have anything further to add to materials and information presented by the applicant's agent this evening?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be pretty brief as Ms. Simpson has covered all of that well. I'll just skip ahead a few slides here. We just wanted to point out on this elevation drawing just sort of what the existing dwelling is versus what the addition you can see here on the right-hand side. Couple site photos just for some context. The first here is taken from the shoreline looking in at the dwelling. And you can see that there is some existing vegetation down the side of the property here, helping to assist in buffering that. And the setback of this portion or the proposed addition would be improved through the proposed works. As outlined in staff report D25022, township staff didn't have any objections to the professional planning opinion presented in the PJR prepared by Morgan Planning and Development. And we were of the opinion that the application did meet the 4 tests and was consistent with the PPS. So for those reasons, planning and development staff have no objections to the provisional approval of this application, subject to the recommended conditions. Those being that municipal taxes be paid to date, the construction shall be in substantial compliance with the plans submitted with the application. The property owners enter into a development agreement with the municipality pursuant to Section 45(9.1) of the Act in order to establish a vegetation protection zone, protecting the existing vegetation on the property and restoring the shoreline area to the maximum extent possible. and that all costs associated with the agreement and its registration on title would be the responsibility of the property owner. Thank you.
Are there any persons participating virtually by Zoom who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? Seeing none, are there any persons in attendance in person who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, I declare the public portion of the meeting application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion. The motion presented before us, identified as COA 2025-032, moved by member Heil, second by member Kish, that staff report D25-022 be received, and further that the minor variance application A15-25 be provisionally approved, subject to the conditions included in as attachment 6 to staff report D25-022. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for that application is now closed. We are going to move forward. So would township staff introduce the application report on any written response to the notice circulated for E3, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-16-25.
Thank you, Chair. The next minor variance application, A16-25, is for the property known municipally as 1180 Brodie Drive. The subject lands are currently zoned general industrial M2 by the township zoning bylaw, yet have historically been used only for residential purposes in the form of a single detached dwelling. Minor variances are requested to permit the expansion to the legal nonconforming residential use through the construction of a detached private garage, as well as requesting an increased accessory building height and size for the proposed garage. This application was submitted under section 45(2) of the Planning Act. The committee would be very familiar with applications submitted under section 45(1), which is a majority of the applications that this committee sees, requesting reduced setbacks, increased lot coverages, those sort of things, where there's a test analysis as required under the Planning Act. Section 45(2) is a little bit different in that it establishes regulations associated with existing buildings and structures and their expansion, where section 45(1) deals with conforming uses. Section 45(2) deals with non-conforming uses. Sorry. In terms of correspondence received for this application, there were no comments or objections received from the clerk's office, Public Works Department, or Fire and Emergency Services. The building department advised that there is no objection to the requested minor variance, but advised that the applicant that a building permit is required prior to starting construction, and that engineer sealed structural drawings, together with the completion and submission of a commitment to general review, form for the review of the structural components by a professional engineer must accompany the building permit application. I will leave it at that for now. The applicant's agent is in attendance this evening and does have a presentation for the committee as well. Thank you.
I now call on the applicant's agent to present the applicant or to present the application together with any relevant information they have.
Good evening again. My name is Vanessa Simpson, and I'm here to represent the applicant on the proposed minor variance application on the lands known as 1180 Brodie Drive. Next. The subject property is located on the north side of Brodie Drive, just outside of Aurelia. The property contains 259.5 meters of frontage along Brodie Drive with approximately 18,000 meters square area. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling and several accessory structures, including some sheds and that sort of thing. The dwelling is serviced by a private well and septic system. I will note that the frontage of the property is heavily treed, which you can see in the side image. And the existing dwelling is significantly set back from the road. While the property and general area is zoned and designated industrial and general industrial, And there are such uses along Brodie Drive. The adjacent property contains Mariposa House Hospice, which is pictured here in the bottom picture. This is a unique use, which many would also consider a sensitive land use, and that should be considered throughout the analysis of this application. You can skip over the next slide. There you go. So as I noted, the property is zoned general industrial and designated industrial and environmental protection. It is important to discuss the background and history of the existing use as it relates to the proposed application. Back in fall 2024, the applicant had submitted a building permit for the proposed detached garage. At the time, the application was deemed incomplete, and staff provided the following comment, which is noted above. I want to note, as part of our application, we have reviewed and investigated the history of the property and its use. It's our understanding that the existing dwelling has existed in its location on these lands since at least 1978, based on aerial imagery. Confirmed by town staff, which is outlined in the staff report, the dwelling seems to be built in approximately 1975, 1976. While the dwelling is not a permitted use in either the current official plan designation or the zone within the zoning bylaw, it has existed and predates both the current official plan and zoning bylaw, and therefore holds the status of being both legal non-conforming and legal non-complying. And here's a historic aerial imagery of the property from 1978. Next slide. So this is really fun jargon to get into, but I thought it might be important to just outline in case you have any questions about this. For committee's reference, these terms legal non-complying and legal non-conforming are often used interchangeably. However, legally, they do have differing definitions. Legal non-complying refers to development that does not comply with the current zoning bylaw, but was lawfully established prior to the passing of the bylaw. Compliance is the standard used when assessing conformity within zoning regulations as set out in the Planning Act. While legal non-conforming, on the other hand, applies to development that does not conform to the current official plan policies, but was lawfully established before the policies came into effect. Conformity is the relevant standard when reviewing policy documents such as official plans. So therefore, Section 34(9) of the Planning Act states, no zoning bylaw shall prevent the use of any land, building, or structure for any purpose prohibited by the bylaw if such land, building, or structure was lawfully used for such purpose on the day the bylaw was passed, so long as it continues to be used for that purpose. Therefore, we are of the opinion that the existing single detached dwelling is both legal non-complying and legal non-conforming, and may be continued to be used as such. Further, town staff have noted their understanding is that the residential dwelling would be considered legal non-conforming. Next slide. So moving on to the proposed development, the application proposes to construct a detached garage as an accessory structure. It's to be located in the northwest corner of the property within the existing cluster of buildings. The proposed location complies with all applicable yard setbacks. The first minor variance is to permit an expansion of the legal non-conforming residential use to allow for the construction of a detached garage accessory to the residential use. In addition, the size of the proposed garage exceeds the permitted size of an accessory structure. The bylaw requires a maximum of 75% of the floor area of the dwelling, or a maximum of 110 square meters. And the proposed garage is 126 square meters. And the height of the proposed garage exceeds the height permitted for accessory structures. The proposed structure is to be 5.25 meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum of 5 meters. Again, this just outlines the provisions in zoning matrix. and site plan. So again, it's kind of small, but you can see the yellow box. That's the proposed area for the garage, significantly set back from the road and near the existing dwelling. And this is a 3D view of what the garage would look like. The intended use is mainly for storage, you know, lawn tractors and snow blowers and all those things. Next slide, please. We understand that section 45.2 is not typically the tool used to assess applications. However, the committee does have the ability to grant permission under section 45.2 of the Planning Act. Under the section 45.2AI of the Planning Act, the Committee of Adjustment has specific authority to grant permission related to legal nonconforming uses, including expansions or alterations of such uses. When it comes to the detached accessory garage, that is part of a legal nonconforming residential use, the committee's authority includes the following. This is our opinion of what your authority is. The committee may permit the enlargement or extension of any building or structure that is used for a purpose prohibited by the bylaw if such use has continued since the bylaw was passed and was lawful at that time. In practical terms, this means the committee may authorize the construction of a new accessory structure, in this case, the garage, in support of a legal nonconforming primary use, which is the longstanding residential use in an industrial zone, if the structure accessory to and in service of the legal nonconforming use, provided the use itself was lawful when established and has continued uninterrupted. So much jargon. Next slide. Perfect. So in formulating the planning rationale for the minor variance application, the following two questions or tests must be provided and reviewed. Is the proposed expansion or change desirable for the appropriate development or functioning of the subject property? Our comments are as follows. The proposed detached garage is an appropriate and functional accessory to the existing legal nonconforming residential use. It is compatible with the continued residential character of the property and supports its long-term viability. The structure is sited in a logical and appropriate location within the existing development cluster, minimizing disruption to the natural environment and preserving the open space character of the lot. The proposed size, height, and setbacks are modest and reasonable, reflecting the scale of the primary dwelling and ensuring compatibility with the site context. Test 2, will the application result in any adverse impacts on surrounding lands? The proposal continues a long-standing and low-intensity residential use, which is appropriate given the property's historic function. The garage is accessory in nature, and its impact on surrounding properties is minimal, with no noise, traffic, privacy, or compatibility concerns anticipated. Given the sensitive nature of the adjacent property being a hospice, it is our professional opinion that the continuation of a residential use, including the proposed detached garage, is more appropriate and less impactful than the range of permitted industrial uses that could otherwise be developed under the current zoning. Such industrial uses would have a significantly greater potential to adversely affect the hospice and the surrounding properties. It is our opinion that the proposed construction of a detached accessory garage is consistent with all applicable planning policies and is considered good land use planning. So in conclusion, I understand that this has been a detailed submission, and I'd be pleased to walk through any part of the material or respond to any questions of the committee. It's our professional opinion that the continued residential use of the subject lands and the proposed accessory garage represent appropriate and compatible land uses. The structure has been thoughtfully designed and sited to integrate seamlessly with the existing development, enhancing the long-term utility of the property without introducing any adverse impacts. We have engaged with staff on multiple occasions throughout this process and have reviewed the staff report and its associated recommendations. Based on our planning analysis and supporting materials submitted, we respectfully request that committee support option 1, being approval of the minor variance application, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to respond to any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Do township staff have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant's agent or any recommended conditions as applicable?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to skip ahead a few slides here as Ms. Simpson has covered a lot of this already. Just a couple site photos to give the committee some context to the property. The first photo here is standing in the driveway looking at the area where the proposed detached garage would be constructed. The property owners were on site when township staff were there, and they advised that a lot of these materials, which are currently being stored outside, would be located within the proposed detached garage. And then just a sort of a wider shot here of that area of where the garage would be constructed together with the existing dwelling located here to the right. So as outlined in staff report D-25-023, there is an existing residential use on the property which is understood to be legal nonconforming and has existed for nearly 50 years on these lands. The proposal to expand a legal nonconforming use by constructing a detached garage with an increased size and height. Section 45.2 does establish regulations that deal with existing legal non-conforming building structures, uses, and their expansion. However, the Act does not specifically state that Section 45.2 can be used to request permissions to facilitate the construction of a new building or structure associated with a legal non-conforming use. Planning staff, therefore, cannot make a recommendation to the committee on this application at this time due to the lack of clarity surrounding the application and the associated legislation. So for those reasons, the committee is presented with three options this evening. The first being to approve the application subject to the following conditions as outlined within staff report D-25-023, being that taxes be paid to date, the construction shall be in substantial compliance with the plans submitted with the application, and the existing vegetation on the property be preserved and enhanced as much as possible. The committee may choose to deny the application. In that decision, the committee will need to include rationale for the denial. And the third and final option available to the committee is a deferral of the application. The committee would need to request further information on how the minor variance would fall within the jurisdiction of the committee as outlined in section 45.2 of the Act, and or a change to the application to meet the applicable legislation. The committee should clarify in their deferral, if you choose that option, what additional information you are seeking in order to make a decision. That is all the comments that I have for this evening. As always, available if the committee has any questions on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any persons participating virtually by Zoom who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Seeing none, there is nobody in attendance here. So we don't have anybody that will be commenting on the application that way. So if there's no questions or comments, I declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? I'm going to go member Bossy first.
Question to staff. 45.2 refers to an extension. Does extension include a standalone building? Or would, if the garage is built onto the house, is that an extension? Just for clarity.
Through to township staff.
Through the chair to member Bossy, that's sort of the question the township staff have at this time is the applicability of section 45.2 and whether it establishes those permissions for detached or new separate standalone buildings versus the permissions of 45.2 when it relates to the expansion of an existing legal non-conforming building or use.
Okay, so I got a question. Through to township staff. and I might be thinking the wrong way here, but I believe we've seen applications come in the past, historical applications over the last 10, 12 years, where the property use has been zoned whatever, and in this case it's industrial use. There has been rezoning that's been completed as part of the process. Obviously, this is legal non-complying, legal non-conforming. Would a rezoning of this property not be beneficial to prevent future issues like this coming to us? Or would a future rezoning be considered? Would that be considered to bring this more into compliance with the zoning bylaw?
Thank you, Chair. To your question, the applicant is welcome to submit any complete Planning Act applications that they wish. I would just note that the property is designated industrial in the township's official plan, which could complicate things at a rezoning level. There are these permissions under the act for the committee to consider these types of applications for expansions to legal non-conforming applications. Rezoning is a route to do that. However, there is the section 45.2, which deals with expanding legal non-conforming uses in existing buildings. So hopefully that answers your question, but
A little bit. Member Kish.
Through the chair to the applicant's agent, from the percentage standpoint, I don't think that was outlined. Is it under the 75%, or are we encroaching on that number as well with the 126 square meters versus the dwelling size?
Through the chair, I don't know the answer to that question. It would, okay, let me go back to my slide here. See if I have it in a bit. I could try to figure it out and come back to you. I don't know what the number is. Do you want me to look it up? Try to figure it out? Okay.
Member Kish, got another one?
Well, while we're waiting, just to add on to Member Bossie's, like, my kind of thoughts are enlargement or extension to me is of an existing item, not really something that is new. That's kind of where I'm sitting on those words as I read through the reports that were in the information that we got. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that one. But I know words can mean a lot of different things. I didn't see definitions to any of them provided by anybody. But to me, this is a new structure. It's not really an enlargement or an extension of a current building.
So in hearing that comment, more of a comment that in hearing that comment, I guess, my background is compliance and regulatory compliance and all that. And typically in the compliance end of the world, you look for definitions, right? And this is a planning act. So if the definition is not provided within the planning act, you go to a higher level document or whatever. I guess the question, to the planning department and or the applicant, does that definition exist on what an extension is? I'm just asking the question.
Through the chair or to the chair. First, to answer your question, committee member Kish, it's about 55%. Yeah. So my understanding is that when the Planning Act or another associated planning legal document doesn't have a definition, we just refer to the dictionary. That was my research kind of down this rabbit hole as well. I will add again down the rabbit hole of looking into this. I referenced some previous case law which have also gone to the tribunal for applications under 45-2 for similar scenarios where an accessory structure like a detached garage received approval through that tool.
Yeah, I know what the question is going to be, but I'll let
Was
member
that
Kish.
in the report that we were given? Because I don't remember reading anything about case law. So like to me, that would be pertinent information to include in reports that are coming to committee.
Through the chair, that was not included in the planning justification report.
Through to planning staff.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would just add that, it's sort of a question that township staff aren't clear on at this point, whether the expansion could be to an existing building or an expansion to the use. Those are sort of two different clarifications as well. So township staff aren't in a position to give an opinion or a recommendation on this application today. The applicant's agent has presented you with their professional planning opinion on this matter in how to proceed. So the committee still has those three options available to them. However you choose to proceed, those are the three available to you.
Member Hawkins.
Just in addition to our definitions and reading in the Planning Act. So we've talked about the enlargement or extension of the building or structure. That's Article I or 1, and it ends with an or, not an and. And the next paragraph talks about the use of such land, building, or structure. So that would be just the use of the land, not necessarily saying it's an extension or an enlargement. So that was an or, not an and. If that helps at all.
Okay. Is there any further question? Member Bossy.
I think with that piece of information, that's different than an extension that, I would lean to accepting the variant or number one, option one.
Okay. Member Kish.
So with reading that, if it was proposed to use like bullet I2, not I1, or whatever it is, double I, not single I. I think from that standpoint, like I don't think we're changing the use of this property. They're living, they need to store their items. I can get on board with that more so. The extension or enlargement piece would be a piece that I would not be able to probably support.
Okay. So what I'm seeing is we're calling for a motion for number 1. So I don't see any other conditions. I see a whole bunch of head shaking. So I'm going to call for a motion for option 1. We'll vote that way first. We're going to do this on the fly. I'll just wait for this to be completed.
Oh, 45-2. This is my first one. It probably took me 4 hours to wrap my head around the application, and I would like to get more legal opinion just to see, because my original conclusion, I think, is where the file should have gone based on staff's report now. Staff previous comments are a bit different, so I can see it a few different. It's challenging one.
So we waited, and voila, we have a motion. Identified as COA 2025-033, which was option 1, moved by member Kish, second by member Bossy, that staff report D25-023 be received, And further that in the matter of minor variance application A17-25 be approved in accordance with option 1 as outlined in the staff report D25023. Is everybody good with the wording? Going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for that application is now closed. You're free to stay if you wish or leave as you wish as we move on to the next application. Would township staff briefly introduce application E4, which is an application for minor variance A1725.
Thank you, Chair. The final application this evening, A17-25 at the lands known municipally as 3469 Riverdale Drive. Minor variances are requested, a minor variance is requested to permit the construction of an attached garage as part of the proposed single detached dwelling with a building height of 6.32 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw would normally permit a maximum height of 5 meters. There were no comments or objections received from the clerk's office or the Public Works and Fire and Emergency Services departments. The building department did advise that pending planning approval, a building permit application would be required for the construction of the new house and associated septic system, and just reminded the applicant to ensure all clearances to structures and property lines as listed in Part 8 of the OBC are adhered to. There is an attendee on Zoom this evening for this property and may wish to address the committee. Thank you.
Attendee being the applicant or their agent?
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Didn't want to get ahead of ourselves. So I now call on that person to please present any further relevant information they have.
Nope. Hello.
We hear you.
Hi, just Derek Porter. I'm co-owner of the property there, 3469 Riverdale. Yeah, just looking for a minor variance to build just a standard, raised bungalow with attached garage. That's, just want to maintain the roof line. It's to us. We're new property owners, as the planner mentioned. There was a previous permit and septic permit, but that was the previous owner, and we're applying for a new permit here. And it's to us, it suits the area, and it's matches existing houses around. It's just nothing excessive. It's just gonna be a 12-foot garage, and it just because the roof line is stepped up, so it just is higher than the 5 meters. So we're just asking for 6.3. I think he has photos of it there of the proposed build, and it's just a standard house with just a slightly taller garage, I guess, but it's just got stepped down a few steps. And like any questions I can answer, but thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Do township staff have anything further to add to the information presented by the applicant or any recommended conditions as applicable?
Thank you, Chair. So just to give some context to the location of the property, it is shown here in red, located along Riverdale Drive. This property is located in a predominantly shoreline residential area. However, this property does not have frontage on the shoreline of the rivers. It is located northeast of the community of Washego. Here's the 2024 aerial imagery of the subject lands outlined in red. You can see that they're surrounded by residential and shoreline residential uses, as well as some rural land to across Riverdale Drive. This photo here does a good job of showing the existing cleared areas. So as the property owner mentioned, there were building permits issued by the township back in 2022 for the construction of a single detached dwelling and an associated septic system. Those permits were, the permit for the house was abandoned. However, the permit for the septic system continued. So there is sort of a partially installed septic system in the rear yard. And the applicants are proposing to use that system for this new dwelling. And the property has already been cleared to allow for development, and no further tree removal is anticipated to facilitate this proposed construction. This is just a copy of the lot grading plan that was submitted with the building permit application. is a little bit challenging to see, but essentially this is Riverdale Drive here to the top of the page, with the driveway coming in here, leading back to the subject attached garage, which is part of the overall dwelling which surrounds the garage. And then that existing septic system, which you can see in the rear yard here. This is the elevation drawing of the front of the dwelling, so you can see the attached garage here. Given the township zoning bylaw definitions of accessory buildings, it includes both attached and detached structures. So although this garage is attached to the principal dwelling unit, the garage is still subject to the reduced maximum building height of 5 meters. Given the design of the dwelling, they were just hoping to have a simple roof line of just a gable roof going for the whole building. And that's why there's an increased height here for the garage, as when you measure the midpoint, it is exceeding that 5 meters. Couple site photos here. The first one is just taken from Riverdale Drive, looking into the property. You can see there's already a driveway installed with a clearing for the septic and the dwelling located here. Same sort of picture, just looking the opposite way back out to Riverdale Drive. And then just a picture of that existing septic system or partially installed septic system on the property. So as outlined in staff report D25-024, and as just recapped, there were building permits issued back in 2022. The applicant has, continuing with that septic, but they are proposing a new or revised dwelling. And there is no anticipated further vegetation removal necessary or to accommodate the proposed dwelling. As outlined within the staff report, planning staff are of the opinion that the application is consistent with the PPS and does meet the 4 tests as required under the Planning Act. And for those reasons, planning and development staff have no objections to the approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions. Being that municipal taxes are paid to date, the construction shall be in substantial compliance with the plan submitted with the application, and that the existing vegetation on the property be preserved and enhanced as much as possible. Thank you.
Are there any persons participating virtually by Zoom who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? We have nobody participating via Zoom that wants to comment on this. There is nobody here in person, so I declare the public portion of the application closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? I'm seeing none. I'm going to call for a motion. We have a motion, COA 2025-34, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hawkins, that staff report D25-024 be received, and further that minor variance application A17-25 be approved, subject to the conditions included as attachment 5 to staff report D25-024. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. The hearing for that application is now closed. We are moving on to a motion for adjournment. Motion before us, COA 2025-35, moved by member Hawkins, second by member Hiles, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:29 p.m. on Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Call for a vote. All those in favor, carried. Have a good night.
Look at that application.